No idea what this thing is doing. I printed off the wrong sermon, so guess what? We're going to go over here and read it to you. You want to know what next week's going to be like? I'll sell you advanced copy. Hopefully, this won't mess up. Well, I'll do it over here. Because I don't think it will mess up over here. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. If I wasn't doing this early in the morning and still asleep, I probably would have been okay. I already told you about the documentary that I watched this morning, Bring Your Own Brigade. It's on Netflix. It's really recommended. And I thought we might want to do that as a group, either here at church, spread out in the basement. There's not that many of us, or we could do it on Zoom and show it that way. So I'll be asking some questions about that in the next weekly update if people are interested in doing that at all. Or we could all watch it and then come and have a discussion, but I think it might be better to watch it together. Especially with Netflix, because you can pause things and ask a question and dig in a little bit deeper. So when I was looking at this scripture, the couple of sentences that kind of stuck to me and made me question was, but to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave for all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. This is again Jesus telling his disciples, I'm not going to be here forever. But think about the two sentences that I just read to you. You must be a servant for many. As I told you, I watched that documentary this morning. And I really think that I would like for us to watch it today. Look at the last 19 months, 20 months, longer than that probably, but definitely the last 19 months or so. Our heroes have done much to keep us safer, to keep us alive. But heroes don't just include medical workers, or in this documentary, firefighters. It's anyone who's been helping others. Many of you are those heroes. You've Zoomed, you've homeschooled, you've gone back to the classroom, you've helped each other. And many folks have given up a lot during this time. I talked with a bunch of my colleagues over the last few months, and many of them are like me. We worked through our vacations, we postponed our classes, and we got tired. As did all of you. I think the whole world is just tired. We wanted to be outside. I wanted hugs and more hugs and more hugs. I've gotten a few, but not as many as I think I would like. Today, you are celebrating 12 years of being an ONA congregation. I want to thank Reverend Todd for helping shepherd you through that process. And to celebrate that, Loveland UCC is now the newest, unless somebody got it last week, ONA church in our conference and in the United Church of Christ. And Andy Lang from the UCC, used to be Coalition, I'm not quite sure what they're calling it now, who's the head of the ONA thing, would like for all churches in the United Church of Christ to be an ONA church. But that's not going to happen. And he knows it, and I know it, and you probably know that as well. But it's a nice stretch goal is what I think I heard him say last time I saw him in person. But what I want to do now is I'm going to ask Betty. Betty said she would say a few words about what ONA meant to her, what it means to her here at St. Paul's, what it meant during the process. So Betty, if you want to come up and or do that, and then I will continue.
Well, when I thought about what I wanted to say, oh, is this better? Better. Well, I wish I could say when Todd first talked about it, Reverend Todd first talked about it, I wish I could say, oh, I'm on board, let's do it. But to be honest, that wasn't what I said. I remember a conversation with Todd so clearly. And I said, Todd, I want to go to a church where all are welcome. Capital A, capital L, capital L, underline, bold, shout it from the mountain, all are welcome. So I didn't want to go to just whites are welcome, or just a certain color skin, and I remember so clearly he said, Betty, it's one thing to not be welcomed. And I think, I was raised in Cheyenne. So if you went to the First Baptist Church and you were white, you felt welcomed. If you were Black, maybe not so much. On the other hand, if you went to the Second Baptist Church in Cheyenne, Wyoming in the 60s and 70s, when I went to Sunday school and you were white, you probably weren't that welcomed. But what Todd said just struck home with me and changed my mind about why we needed to become open and affirming. He said, it's one thing not to be welcomed. It's another thing to be condemned and judged and totally felt like you were just the worst thing on earth. So if you want to have a church where all are welcome, you have to say to the community of gays and lesbians that means you. So if you say all are welcome, Betty, if you're a gay person, you're going to say what? All are welcome except for me. And so he, just with those few words, he changed my mind of why we needed to become open and affirming and really become a church where all are welcome. I want to say that we were the 842nd church. I had to look it up in our history book. 842nd church of UCC to become open and affirming. Anybody know how many churches are open and affirming now? Over 1,600. I just looked it up yesterday. Over 1,600. So we were almost at the midpoint. And the thing that's exciting for me is that it's one of the few movements I see that's still growing. There's still more and more churches becoming open and affirming. So again, I wish I could say when we first started this journey, I was so progressive and so open-minded, but it just takes a few words of something like Reverend Todd, who is always my hero, to say, look, if we want to make sure all are welcome, we need to do this. The other thing I wanted to do is just to read for you our ONA statement that we made when we first applied, or however you do it. So this is what we said. We believe all people are created in God's image and thus are loved and blessed equally by God. We welcome persons of every gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, age, race, nationality, economic and social status, faith background, marital standing, or family structure. So those are the words we said. So I think it's been a wonderful journey we've been on, and I thank all of you for your part in it. Before I step down, I just want to say one more thing. Sean, thank you for that music. That was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. So thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you, Betty. Well, I had asked if anyone wanted to say anything today, and Betty said she would say something. Would you like to say something? Then come on up here and say it.
I didn't realize we had to formally tell you yet.
Well, you didn't, but.
Well, my thought about it at first was, I think I know people from decades back who were professionally, that I knew very well, who were lesbian, but we didn't talk about it. And so I never had a chance to ask anybody what their experiences were and so I wasn't negative about the idea at all. I just wasn't comfortable because I didn't understand. And so what really helped me, and I don't remember how it was arranged, but I remember we were in this conference room and Todd was probably there. But what I remember is a conversation with Keith Reynolds. Do you remember Keith? Some of you? And yeah, and he talked about his discovery of himself as being gay and how he didn't understand what he was feeling and how he got rejected by his family. And that really connected me much more with the experience that someone who has a different sexual identity was living with. And I think that's sort of a good thing on all kinds of issues, that until we really understand people's experience of what it's like to be another race, another religion, another sexual orientation, or whatever it is, tall, short, whatever, or abilities, that it's that human connection and sharing not just the facts, but the experience we had that's really powerful.
Thank you, Jenny. That's always kind of the case is, a lot of people before, I don't think it's as common these days, would say, why is this gay thing an issue? I don't even know anyone that's gay. But that's always wrong.
This is just unbelievable. But I was in the College of Ag, for my career here. And I remember one day I was teaching a core course, and I wanted the students to understand that experience of somebody who was marginalized in an environment. And so I invited a graduate student who was Jewish to talk about what it was like to be Jewish in a dominant Christian environment. Oh my word, I was so shocked because the students started attacking him. Who do you think Christ is? I mean, I was just not handling as well as I should have because I just was so shocked by their suggestion. The next thing I know, they had gone to the dean's office and complained about how I was interfering with their religion. And in that conversation was the associate dean. I was flabbergasted. And we got to talking about gender identity. And he says, oh, that's a problem they have in the East. We don't have that out here. And I go, gays are everywhere. It's just, they don't feel comfortable being open about it. And then when Matthew Shepard was killed, he said, oh, they're just making too much of a fuss about this. That's the kind of environment sometimes that we face in trying to be an advocate or understand.
Oh. I didn't hear it. Am I called on?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I just want to say that I was so excited that this was even an option. I didn't know when Reverend Todd first introduced it to us that it was something that could happen for our church. And for me, it's especially important because I have a gay brother. And in fact, I left the Catholic Church because the Catholic Church told him that he could not be who he is. And that was not okay with me. And I have many friends who are gay. And so having my church actually say that people like my brother and my beloved brother-in-law, Todd, are welcome meant the world to me. And it is a huge point of pride and one that whenever people ask me what church I belong to, it's one of the first things I mention because I think it's wonderful. And back to Jenny's point, in particular, it's wonderful because we live in Wyoming and because, honey, are you trying to distract me? Because we have a very conservative religious landscape. I think I've mentioned before that I have a former colleague who went to all the churches in Laramie because she was a religious studies professor, and we have a very conservative religious landscape. And so I feel like our presence and this vote is actually more important than it would be in the East because people need a place here to feel, we need a place here in Wyoming, in Laramie, to feel welcome. So that's all. Thank you all.
You. Hi, Iris. There she goes. Oh. So next weekend, next Saturday, is the homecoming parade. The minister, I won't be here because I'll still be coming back, but the Ministerial Association is going to march in that parade. We've been invited to march with them. I've marched with them the last, well, there wasn't one last year, but 3 years before that, I marched with the Ministerial Association on behalf of St. Paul's. And if any of you would like information about where they're meeting, well, I can tell you, they're meeting at the Presbyterian Church on Grand in the parking lot on the Ivinson side. But I don't know the time. I can get those details and send it out. But if anyone wants to be proud of St. Paul's, that's one place you can do it, is marching in the parade. We have boards that the youth have made. We've got a couple of yard signs that you can carry so that they know you're from St. Paul's. If anyone is interested, let me know and I will send out. I think the parade is at 9. Yeah, something like that. I know in the past years we've met over at the Presbyterian Church or Canterbury House about 8 o'clock for donuts and coffee. And I don't know if they're going to do that again this year, but I will find out and let you guys know. So I'm going to go back now to what I was talking about. Whoever wishes to be first among you must be a slave for all. Becoming an ONA congregation may not feel like being a slave to all, but you might think of it that way. And slave probably isn't the right word. I think probably a model for others is a better way to put that. It took a lot, I can imagine. I've not been at a church that went through the ONA process. I've only been at churches afterwards. But in Texas, we rewrote our ONA covenant while I was there because they wanted to include sexual orientation, and you've got them. Betty read that to you. That's already in your ONA statement because that's one of the first things I looked up to see if you had, if we needed to do any tweaking, and I think it's fine. Anyway, I can imagine it takes faith and hope and understanding for you to even begin to look at the ONA process. I'm sure Todd just doesn't come in and say, we are doing this. You have to gently nudge usually and get people to be interested in it. That's what it took in Loveland. For me, I was more interested in St. Paul's and coming here because you were an ONA church. And you were an ONA church in Wyoming, where I can feel safe pretty much, but I'm not so sure I would do that in Douglas or some other small towns in Wyoming that have UCC churches that are a little more conservative, if we can say it that way. I knew that you guys had called Jamie. She was a friend of mine. We went to church together. We were members of the same church in Fort Collins. We went to seminary together. And I knew that Jamie left because Sharon got a new call. Because when we talked, Jamie really talked you folks up. And she really encouraged me to go ahead and apply for this position. I talked to her before I applied and talked to her after I applied and after I was called. Because Jamie would have stayed here if Sharon hadn't had to move. So I guess I'm glad that Sharon got a new job. And I actually was in retreat. One of the people, there were 10 people in my retreat this week. One of them actually serves a church in the conference that Sharon and Jamie serve at a UCC church, and she knew both of them. I've heard a few times since I've been here from different people, not always the same one, that we need to be cautious at St. Paul's because we are open and affirming. We have a rainbow decal on our sign outside. I don't know how each and every one of you felt during the ONA process, but I would think that on a place like Laramie, it probably took some, I don't know, strength, some guidance, something to make you want to go through the process. As Betty said it, Todd told her one line and that changed her mind. I really want to thank you for taking that step, for doing that hard work. I know it's hard work. I've helped churches like Loveland and others, a couple in Texas, to go through the process, but not from beginning to end. And Andy Lang, I've mentioned him. He's the head of the ONA ministry at the UCC, and he really thanks you. Like I said, Andy wants 100%. But more than thanking you, I want you to know that I am really proud of this congregation and of you, and that you took the time and the discernment to go through that process. The other day, someone posted on Facebook the plaque at the bench at UW in honor of Matthew Shepard. That's the only recognition he gets in this state. It was in honor of his birthday, which was October 12th. I want you to look at what happened in Laramie since October 12th, 1998. Some of you have been here that time. If you look around, physically, maybe not much has changed. I mean, it's not like Denver or Fort Collins where there's all these high-rise skyscraper crane things building stuff. We don't have that here. But physically, it may not have changed. But look around inside this sanctuary. We have members who have come to us because of our ONA status. We have members who are here because they knew that we would be accepting, loving, and honest with each other and accept their family as they were, regardless of their gender identity and expression. And we have members here like Paul, who's been here for over 50 years. And Paul stayed here through what I imagine were some upsets and disagreements, some laughter and some tears, and the ONA process. We have people like Ginny, who's definitely a slave to others, not only in her work, but in her volunteering at St. Paul's. You know, she cares for the parsonage. She gives suggestions for worship and songs and seminars. She helps Lucy and she helps Jan. And there's Betty, who's helped not only St. Paul's, but has been on the conference committee on ministry, or the association committee on ministry. And I know I'm not mentioning everybody. There's Cindy, who does all these things I say she can do. And she gets them done somehow. And I know that I've not mentioned everyone. There's just too many of you, and we would be here a long time. But you know, Carol and Amy and Christy work with our kids, and Katie and Mickey help with the music. Terry gives rides. Grace washes the dirty laundry. Tara and Peggy and the girls, well, maybe more Tara and Peggy than the girls these days, are cleaning the church. Guillermo takes care of the yard. Lucy calls me at least once a week asking me to pray for other people in the congregation or other people that she knows. She never asks me to pray for her, but I do, because I know if she calls me, she's thinking she needs something as well. And I really like that. And Kay and Annie have been here for a long time. You didn't bring your friend today. They've brought friends to church with us. I don't know if things would be different at St. Paul's if the congregation was not ONA. But I'm pretty certain that you learned a lot about yourselves and about each other and about Laramie as you went through that process. You allow me every year to have Transgender Day of Remembrance service in November. I wish more of you would come and join us, but we do it. And it's kind of interesting because I'm now getting questions from others in the Ministerial Association. Are you doing it this year? What's it going to look like? Who's going to be there? So it's now become a St. Paul thing, even if we held it at the Presbyterian Church last time because of the choir size that we had. This year, I'm going to be returning from vacation. I don't know what Transgender Day of Remembrance will look like. It will happen. Even if I'm not here in town, it'll Zoom somehow, but it's a Saturday, so we'll see what happens. If no planes are delayed, I could possibly make it home in time. We'll do it in the evening. If you want to help plan that worship service or any of our worship services, come and see me. That in particular is a very moving service. If you haven't been, we show a picture of all of the people that we can get a picture of, and we show their name, their age, and how they were murdered. Because it really is, they were murdered. This past year, we included people who were who had a death that was related to COVID, but were still a transgender person, because those people are typically and historically have less medical care and less insurance and don't go to the doctor because of how they are expressing themselves. Today we're celebrating that you have been an ONA congregation since 2009. But our job now, as I told them when I went down to Loveland and talked to them, it's not enough just to say, oh, we're ONA and get that plaque on the wall, which ours is out of the entryway. It's living into that covenant that makes a difference. You know, at the beginning I said, whoever wishes to be first among you must be a slave for all. Well, that's kind of important. And our job now, if you will, is to not forget that we are ONA and to just move on, but it's to become, I think, an accessible to all congregation. The philosophy, the process is pretty much the same. We've completed all of the paperwork. It's gotten lost in the mail at National, but that's to be expected in the last year. A lot of things have changed. And it was not really something that we would have been worried about. But I will take this up again in the new year, because I think it's important that we've got our paperwork in order and a few other things that we're going to need to do, but we're really close to being accessible to all. Accessible to all means welcoming everyone, and it has more to do with their mental health and their physical challenges than it does with saying accessible to all sounds like, oh, we need a ramp for Sam. Well, that's not it. We need to be able to greet people at the door that might not be having a perfect day, or there might be somebody that brings their child who, as we know, runs around and gets under everything and has to explore. That's fine, but it's learning how to be open about that. So I'll keep working on that, and we will get some more information. Today, like I said, I'm leaving about 2 o'clock to go down to Denver, and I'm going to learn about disabilities ministries. And I think that that helps me to be able to live into our ONA covenant, because having an ONA covenant means that we are already at that point of accepting and being open. Stay tuned for more information. When I have it, you get it. I'm trying to remember who I sent the paperwork to and if they're even still at the national office. And I don't know if you know it, but the national office has sold the national office, and they're moving to rented space. I don't know what they're going to do at the chapel, though. That's something that I think in the contract that the chapel has to stay a chapel. It's a beautiful chapel. And it'll be just down the street from where the offices are. So they're not moving out of Cleveland. Just they're so used to staying at home that there's no sense renting space. You know, John Dorhauer's having a fit that they're renting, you know, this huge suite for him, and he doesn't go to work anymore. So, and he traveled a lot even when he did. So he's really been behind minimizing the footprint. So stay tuned for more information about accessible to all, and I will write a report about my meetings in Michigan. And who knew that there was a place called Wyoming, Michigan, and that I'm leaving Wyoming to go to Wyoming? Oh, I didn't know any of that. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm going to Wyoming for the week, so I'm really not going far. Anyway, stay safe. Stay proud of what we have accomplished, what you have accomplished here. I keep going back and forth between we and you because I wasn't here, but we need to embrace not only the ONA status of this church, but as I told them in Loveland, you have to live into that covenant as well. And one person took a great offense in Loveland when I said, it's not, you have to remember that when you vote to become an ONA church and an ONA congregation, you are also publicly coming out as a supporter of ONA, which is everyone. And he said he couldn't do that. He wanted the church to do it, but he couldn't personally do it. And the way I had worded it, he felt like I was putting him up against a wall. Well, I still think if you're coming to an ONA church, you're got to kind of be pretty open, or you're not going to be able to survive in that church very long. Or the church like I was in Denver that had been ONA for a very long time, but kind of lost sight of what that meant because welcoming wasn't their forte. Yeah. So stay safe, stay proud, stay safe, and embrace not only the ONA status of the church, but your ONA covenant with each other and with the world. Amen.